Got it.
They all.
All right. So, there's John again. And there was Laura. I lost someone. But anyway, I'm not going to worry. I'm done with the technology side of it. So everyone can hear. John, you can hear?
Yep. Perfect.
Excellent. All right. So welcome. Many blessings. I feel that's like a very profound opening and nothing more needs to be said after that. But I thought today, because I've had a hell of a week. I don't know about you guys, but it's been a hell of a week. And one of the things that keeps happening, and this is, somebody's putting their finger up.
I'm going to mute and I'm going to unmute you. So give me a second.
Oh, I'm muted.
So unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself or unmute you.
Is that better? So everyone's muted? Okay. So no one can talk? Everyone can hear though, right? Yep. Okay, so, hey, Laura.
Dave, they can unmute when they raise their hand. So we'll do the same thing as before. So if you want engagement, then we'll just raise your hand.
All right. Look, I'll just leave that to you guys, to you and Annie and whatever, and you, because
right
I don't know about that.
Okay.
So the idea then that because we're looking at the idea of retraining our minds, right, by giving a new purpose to everything that we think we see. Right? And we can't just simply walk around and say there is no world, because obviously we still react to things, which is proof of the pudding that we actually do think there's a world. So one of the things that happens is your transformation keeps pace with you, which is very helpful since it's just your own mind that you're transforming anyway. But there's this kind of golden rule that you never get more than you can handle. But at the same time, you're learning to become miracle-minded. So what you think you can handle is always going to be a limitation on what it is you're capable of, because you're the co-creative expression of life itself, capable of absolutely anything, right? Including this Zoom room and whatever's going on. So the idea that my transformation keeps pace with me is something that I've been looking at this week, because I've had 3 or 4 associations of my own mind. I could say people, right, which is the old dualistic way. But if I say associations of my own mind, in my face this week, telling me that somebody's died, somebody's died, somebody's died. And in one of those cases, I feel suicidal, but if I try it, Jesus is going to punch me in the face when I get to the other side, and all these sorts of stories going on. And so I'm looking at everything that goes on for me as an idea of being a reflection of what it is I believe about myself. Right now, 9.9 times out of 10, I have no, how would I say it? No emotional reaction, but I'm still capable of a reaction. I'm still capable of interacting and all of that and making a response. But generally, most of the time, that'll come from a place of there is no world, there is no death. I am what life is, and so are you. And there's an address or a declaration to that association or whatever, however that's meant to look. Sometimes it might just be a hug. Sometimes it might be, as in one of the cases this week, a request to sit down and do some of the workbook lessons and whatever, and go through a whole bunch of formal, what seems to be formal stuff. It can look like anything, but I'm always looking at it as the idea of this is my mind. Okay, so everything is not something else out there, it's me out there, right? Now, that doesn't matter whether I want to think it's me out there as in Dave, this avatar, it doesn't really matter, because there is no separation actually, or Dave the Christ, right? So whatever comes up, and it's been coming up as death, 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 death. If you look on the media at the moment, everything's death, 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 death. And I guess, and I think we touched on this last week a little bit, but I guess it's more in your face at the moment, that the dream or the world is a place where all things come to die, that the dream is a dream of death, because it's in the media and it's in people are talking about it, and it's everyone's wearing those masks and things, and it's kind of like this iconic hallmark, you know. It's like death is coming, death is coming. And it's just really funny. It's like, I know that the world is a place where all things come to die. I know that all physical things pass away, but nothing actually dies. There is no real death, because any real death would be the death of God, because God is everything, right? So in looking at it this week, I've had 2 moments, I think, out of those 3 or 4 that have come up, where I've gotten despondent about the whole thing, you know, and sitting in that idea of, oh, not this again, not this idea of death again, not this bloody whatever it is. And so I made a decision the other day to look at it, right? This is 2 days ago, I think, or 3 days ago, and I'm just going to use these time stories for a second. But I thought, all right, I'm going to look at this idea of death and see why it is that I'm so fed up with it, right? And because the idea of death is that it appears because I'm attracted to it, okay? And I'm keeping my finger on my nose, keeping it singular there. Death is the dream I'm having because that's what I want to have, right? And as I transition from that old idea of what I thought I wanted, which was the dream of death, to the dream of salvation, right, which is the happy dream, you go across these bridges all the time. Right. So in the course, it talks about the bridge to the forgiven world, whatever. Well, I think it's Donovan, Annie, that song. First there's a mountain, and then there's no mountain. Then there's another mountain. Then there's no mountain. And it's like you're constantly doing this in your transformation, going up a mountain, down a mountain, up a mountain, down a mountain. And every time there's an obstacle, every time something shows up in a repetitive way, right? And everything's repetitive. If you're being really vigilant for your cycles, okay, you'll find that some cycles are quick. They'll come on a daily basis, right? Might be a chit chat with the neighbor over the fence who's always got the same thing, pisses you off all the time, whatever. Some might be a weekly thing. You know, I have to go to the pay office once a week, and that bitch behind the desk always laughs at me how much I make, you know, whatever. There's all sorts of stories, right? Every cycle is circumscribed by a story about it. Okay, so those stories take different forms perhaps every time they come around. Maybe it's the same form every time it comes around, but you can always recognize it by the emotional signature that it carries. So I sat with this idea of being bored about the idea of death. Right now, on one side of looking at that idea, I saw that, oh, of course I'm bored with it, because like I'm for a moment, I'm still finding myself here, but with no longer any interest in that old game of death. Right. But at the same time, being vigilant for whether I'm kidding myself about that or not. Right. And it's like, it's always better to err on the side of doubt, on the side of being human, and allow Jesus to be right about everything, rather than to think I know what I'm talking about and I'm okay now, Jesus, thanks very much. You know, it's like an alcoholic who goes to a couple of 12-step meetings. Oh, I'm good now, thanks very much. You don't see them for a month and then they're back. But so I'm sitting looking at this idea of death, and you know, when you ask for more, so when your transformation, if you start to get flatline in your transformation, if you find yourself in that happy, peaceful place all the time, it's like there's nothing going on for you. If your transformation is not tumultuous, if your transformation is not pushing your apples out of the cart, like at least once a week, right? It means you've formulated this little safety zone of spiritual nothingness that's like a window that you peer out from, and I'm safe with my spiritual concepts and all of this sort of stuff, but it's not active. And the light, the communication that we're chasing here, the experience that we're chasing happens in the activation, just like that, all right, in the mind, when the mind just flips open automatically, because communication is natural and it's supposed to happen naturally like that. And so I sat there with this idea of death, and I'm bored with it, or I wish it would just go away. And I'm sure everybody wishes it would go away from a certain point of view, but I wish it would just go away and we can get on with something else in the transition. And I realized that in that moment, I was validating that idea of death. In that moment, I was giving it total reality over my dominion. And I was okay with that. I'm like, all right, let me just sit in this totally. And I sat there for about an hour meditating. And then the next thing you know, I started in my hands and my feet. I started to get these cramps in my hands. I couldn't open my hands. And it was like I was rigor mortis or something, you know, and the idea of death was creeping in. And it was like, if you've ever experimented with metaphysics, like the nature of metaphysics as an application on the physical body can bring on some pretty horrendous things. But anyway, so my hands were like this. I could open them, but it was sore, and my feet and my ankles and everything like that. And then I started getting this kind of like, I don't know what you'd call it, a containment in my head, like this kind of like focus on just the body. I was not able to sort of like transcend it as I usually do. And I knew I'd just sit there. I thought, all right, I'll just sit there. If this is going to be my last moment in this vessel, that'll be great. You know, I don't really care, but I'm just going to sit here and let the miracle happen. Okay. So I sat there for what seemed like almost a full day. And by the end of the day, my hands could open and my ankles and my feet weren't sore, and things started to return to normal. And there was this kind of intense clarity, I guess, around the idea that there is no death, the idea that doesn't matter what the body goes through, that the spirit is eternal. And all I heard in my head was, now I can't remember. I was telling Dean yesterday. Dean was here telling me about the death of somebody and going through his own disaster. Life and life eternal. So all I heard in my head at the end of the day was the words life and life eternal. Not life eternal, but life and life eternal, because what appears in form is not the opposite of life. It's another form of life. All right. So we include in the body, include in the vessel, the ideas of the vessel, the association around the identity as that transforming, what would you call it? As that transforming utility, something like that, knowing that it's not the truth of us. Okay. So one of the things that happens when you find yourself with nothing really going on and you're in this kind of safe space and safety zone, what happens is you tend to lose sight of the miraculous moments that are available and applicable, because you're no longer being vigilant for your cycles. You're no longer being vigilant because you find that sort of sense of peace, and it just doesn't change. Okay. And one of the technologies that the ego likes is that if it can just maintain everything in a specific kind of parameter without anything changes, that it thinks that it'll find peace. You know, if nobody knocks on the door to screw with my head today, that'll be great. I'll have a peaceful day. Not recognizing that that knock on the door is the opportunity to not only deepen that sense of peace, but to clear out a lot of the crap in the basement of the consciousness. Okay. And if you think of your mind as like a multi-story house, we have down in the basement or in the cellar, we have the subconscious, which is just a collection of old boxes and things with memories that and potential and all this sort of stuff. And then we have this conscious level that we live in, or seem to live in the dream, where we see, hear, smell, touch, taste, and think only about those things, because that's the range and limit of the ego. The ego knows nothing for certain outside of that. It can guess and it can imagine, but it can't know. All right. And then we have the miracle level slightly above that. And then, of course, the super conscious on the top floor, which is the God mind. And those opportunities where you allow for the mind to open through being willing to confront those cyclical things that show up, the opportunities for that connection through the Holy Spirit to the miracle-minded level, which is the level above or below. It doesn't matter how you play it out. And you'll find out for yourself where that is in meditation, because some of the lessons in the course tell you to drop down and back into your mind. And some of them say, imagine yourself being led forward and upwards through the clouds and things like that. And for me, it's always upwards. I've never had a downward moment, but I have gone down in my meditation in order to go forward. All right. And that's never a structured thing, but it's always a guided thing. So allowing the Holy Spirit to guide you is very important. So in looking at that idea of death then, and any idea of it, all right, so in our temporal association that we have, or in my temporal association that I have with the world, the foundation of it rests on death, okay? It doesn't rest on separation. The formulation of my thought system in the world rests on separation, but the separation occurred before the world was made. Okay, does that make sense? So the world was made for man as a place where he could come to learn to get the results of his own thinking, and thus learn the power of his own mind in the ability and the availability of being able to make a new choice about himself, which had to be given. Okay, because in the thought system of man, there is no alternative. The alternative came through the resurrection. The alternative came through the teachings and the life and the experience of Jesus Christ 2,000 odd years ago. And that was the insertion into the human consciousness of the concept of forgiveness. Prior to that, it was an eye for an eye. If someone did something to me, well, bugger you, I'm going to get you back. Forgiveness was unheard of. And Jesus said, look, what are you guys doing? Just forgive. Just let all this go and let's move on. You know, there's bigger and better things. So that idea then, that insertion, right? And this is how I'm going to do it, because you're not, and if I talk to it for a second, I'm not this body that seems to have lived for 57 years so far, blah, 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 and neither are you, right? I am this mind utilizing this avatar, this body, right, for this experience, for this purpose, right? But within that mind also, through the structure of that house, right? So let's say those levels of mind, I am able to access a place in my, and I'm going to call it a place. It's not really a place, but I don't have a word for it. I'm able to access a place in my mind where that actual insertion of forgiveness, represented through the symbology of Jesus walking the planet, loaves, fishes, this is good wine, Jesus, thanks very much, all of that, where that actually happened. Okay? When you find that in your own mind, you'll be like, how the hell didn't I even know this was here? It seems perfectly natural. It's perfectly familiar, all right? And it's not that forgiveness is familiar, but it's what it represents. It's representing that doorway, representing that opening, representing, all I have to do is be willing. It's representing that place where in my own mind, I just simply, and there it is again, right? It's like a telephone line. I'm making a quick little call through the Holy Spirit back home to eternity, back to God, talking to all my friends and family, whatever, who's already actually there, including you guys, and bringing that phone call down through the certainty of my mind in the extension of the light of my mind, which is happening right here and now. Okay. Now, a lot of people just meditate to try and get rid of their shit. A lot of people like, and this is me as a lot of people, right? I used to be one of these guys that would go off to the forest and whatever, and find a quiet place where I could meditate, and I'd have to have my sacred time and all of that. And that was fine. That was part of my journey back in the very beginning. But after a while of doing that, it kind of gets transcendental, where you realize that your peace of mind is dependent upon having the surrounding of the forest and whatever it is, framework that you use to support yourself in that, rather than having that inner contact all the time and immediately, wherein there is no forest, there is no world. I don't need anything outside of myself in order to fulfill not only my goal as far as I'm aware of it through meditation, but my goal as far as I'm unaware of it in the acceptance of atonement for myself. Okay? Because whether you're aware of it or not, the whole purpose of meditation, prayer, and everything else is the enlightenment of the mind. Okay. And through prayer, through meditation, is the participation in an orchestration of a light factor that is entered in through that idea of forgiveness, through the idea of the resurrection, which is the qualifier or the quantifier of forgiveness, 2,000 odd years ago, that is in you now. It's not something you have to work out. It's not something you've got to get right. It's already in you. It's active. It's already in you. I just need to participate in my own individual transformation, and I'm going to stumble into it whether I like it or not. Now, at some point, I'm going to stumble into it whether I like it or not, but that could be in 10 million years. Okay? The Course has come to save us time, to collapse the alpha and the omega to our current location in time and space, right? Where we can actually be aware of it happening, because if we're not aware of it happening, what the hell good is it? Okay? You've got to be aware of it happening. Collapsing that alpha and the omega of every cycle that you have, bringing about the advent of that holy instant in that moment where it's recognized that forgiveness is the only way out of the cycle. Does that make sense? Is everybody nodding? 1, 2. Eric's kind of nodding. Yep. Donna, yep. Okay. So literally the way that I meet and confront and react and respond and whatever to everything in time and space, recognize of the necessity to do so through realizing that I've been triggered or I've been upset or whatever, is miracle mindedness, is the miraculous nature of the mind that is just open to whatever. Okay, and you have to be open to whatever. If you're still trying to structure your own transformation, that's not a transformation. It's a mansformation, right? The true transformation of the mind is one where every confrontation I make with my own bullshit has to be miraculous, has to be a leap of faith, right? And faith is its own reward. You start off, I'm going to take a little action here in my life, and I don't know how I'm going to complete it, but I'm going to have faith that I'll complete it. And then boom, that action's completed through faith, and it always is completed through faith, and your faith builds, right? Giving you the reward of more faith, right? So when the next thing comes along and it seems to be bigger, you don't feel kind of like out of sorts when you have to put a greater leap of faith into action. Right? Oh, I don't know about this one, Jesus. I've confronted some little things, but this one, I don't know. Maybe you can't deal with this one for me. Which is kind of funny, because if Jesus can't deal with it, you're screwed anyway. May as well go and put on one of those, join the crowd. It's funny. So death is the world, all right? So, and within the world, right? And let's be totally within the world for a moment, all right? Conceptually, until you've had an experience, until your mind has been illuminated by the grace of God, and you've actually seen that you're in eternity, okay? Totally be in the world, right? I'm in the world. Yep, I'm a body. Yep, I'm gonna die. I'm got a tumor in my stomach or whatever it is, and I'll use anything, and that's where I'm going to stay, because in that place I'm entitled to miracles. In that place, the miracle is available to me. If I'm trying to transcend it and be all spiritual and lovey-lovey about the whole thing, then I'm not being totally honest with my humanity, right? And as above, so below. If I find myself here, if I find myself completely constricted by my ideas of death, by my ideas of body, then fine, I'm a body. What the hell? I've been a body before. I'll probably be a body again. And who the hell knows how many more bodies until the end of time and space. Jesus says the end can be a long, long way off. But he also says, what's 10,000 years for they have come? And I'm telling you they've come because I'm sitting here telling you that. And it's not that I didn't want to come, but when I realized what it was that I came back to, I'm like, uh-oh. It was a different time zone, but it was the same shit, you know. But at least people weren't clubbing each other over the head to have sex. So that was kind of a relief. Leaves a hell of a bruise. So the idea then that I need to be aware of my cycle, right, is something that I want to impress in this Zoom meeting, because it's something tangible, it's something applicable, it's something that you can look at in a day-to-day thing. And it's really all we're looking at, right? It's really the whole thing that we're looking at. It's like I'm being vigilant for the kingdom of heaven. And I'm also watchful for anything that drags me out of that. Now, if the kingdom of heaven is my state of perfect inner peace, whatever drags me, right? And that's what you can call that mental health if you want, right? Because I'd have another little group thing that I do, an actual physical group, not on here. And I actually, this is funny, just a little aside, I actually have a solicitor who I've given a copy of the course to, the Sparkly book to, and she's looking for me right now, even though she has no clue what I'm talking about. I'm absolutely certain she thinks I'm off my brain bonkers. She's looking at me right now at a way to amend the laws that are prevalent and current to anyone who's admitted to a psych ward, right? So that they can also begin to avail themselves in there of this alternative technology for recovery. Because there's a lot of people, and I know we spoke about this briefly last week, but there's a lot of people that end up in the psych ward who have random transcendental experiences, whether that be through drugs, which I don't validate, or whether that be natural through meditation or anything, and they don't know what to do with it, right? So I have a solicitor who's looking into that, and we had about a 30-minute meeting the other day, and I could see her trying to refrain from looking at this. Looking at the ceiling and keeping, you know, but anyway, God bless her. She's doing whatever she can, and we're progressing forward slowly. Everything in time and space is slowly. So, but I got off track there. But being willing to look at your cycles, right? So the same situation, and I know we talked about this last week, but this is the whole thing. Okay, so last week we talked about it as the rat jumping out on the way to the market. Okay, that's a cycle. But be aware that in your own experience, in your own mind, there are recurring thoughts which play out there, out in the platform of the world, that represented then by a symbolic representation that you can relate to, because as I said, there's no point if you can't relate to it, right? Where you'll see that, oh, this again, the same thing, the same whatever. All right. Don't let those moments pass you by. Those moments are literally the doorways to transformation, literally the doorways to nirvana. Okay. They're important moments. So I know that it's often, and I guess I'm recapping a bit here, but it's often, because the ego doesn't like to lose face, right, unless it's to its advantage. But it's often that you might find that you don't want to take responsibility for something when you recognize it in the moment, because you might consider that perhaps the situation's not optimal, right? Oh, what if I have a meltdown in front of my friends? Or what if I start crying? Or what if all of this stuff happens? There is never, all right, because as above, so below, God's will, thy be done. There is never a moment that is not optimal, right? The transformation occurs by the grace of God through you, by the power of the Holy Spirit in you. It doesn't matter where you are, what's going on. The moment you recognize that cycle, that trigger, no matter how small it is, don't waste it. Because the only honest moment that you're going to have with it is right then, in that moment of recognizing it. As soon as you put it into the past, oh, I'll deal with this later, or I'll deal with this next time, you've already pushed it down into the pit of denial, and you're attempting to deal with it as a memory. All right. But memories don't actually exist. You make them up. They live from ideas of that you might have had a past, but you never had a past. You only have this moment. Okay. Past and past memories are a funny thing. I had one this week of a memory about 25, 30 years ago. And it was completely different when told back to me by somebody than my own memory of it. And I had this blank kind of thing in my mind where I couldn't actually find the memory that they were telling me that I'd had. But I had my version of events, which I subsequently came to realize was completely erroneous and a whole load of bum. But because my past thoughts don't actually exist, the only moment I can catch myself in the transformation, the only moment that I have access to the miracle is now. Okay, the only moment I have is now. Not tomorrow, looking back on what happened yesterday. That's already gone. If I'm trying to activate that in my mind now as an idea of release or an idea of something, all I'm doing is having this kind of constructed, right, ego constructed release that is limited because I'm looking at the idea of limitation as the catalyst for my release. Does that make sense? It's like I'm looking at an idea that I am making up, which isn't actually happening to me now, as the catalyst for my release. All I can do is release my mind from the habit of doing that. And that's all the release will be. The release from the cycle won't occur because I'm not actually addressing it where it is in the present. Okay. It has to be in the present. It's like it won't, that's why enlightenment's not in the future. You can think it might be in the future, but it's not. It's always going to be now. It's always going to be in this moment. I'm not offering the miracle to anyone tomorrow. I'm not offering it from the past 2,000 years ago when Jesus walked the planet to bring it to you today. Right? This is a living message. This is a vibrant, living, energetic, spontaneous message that's occurring now. Which is why if you're studying the book, if you're like, and I have to forgive myself for this because I had the same thing for a moment when I first started highlighting everything and doing all this thing. Right? That message is already in you the moment that you've read the book. Okay? It's actually already in you before you read the book because we're looking at this from a point of it being done. All we're remembering is that we've actually already done it. But we're kind of stupid and we need 365 lessons because, like, well, I don't know if I'm going to trust Jesus on that one. Just one more lesson, Jesus. You know, it's kind of funny. So when I try to release something from the past, all I can do is release my idea that I think it is actually in the past, right? But because my ideas don't mean anything, all I'm doing is kind of like practicing, right? And if you want to look at the whole course as practicing, every lesson is a practice. Every lesson, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Jesus says, when, Holy Son, you know, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But every lesson is practice for the one lesson where you actually mean it. And that moment where you actually mean it, yes, I'm willing to give up the world and follow you, Jesus, it's done. So look at that. Okay. We're going to look at it and look at it and look at it until we no longer feel like we need to look at it, that we can actually go through it. All right. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to sit there and I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to sit there and let that go. And then the next time I walk out of my door and something triggers me or I'm activated by something and it pushes a button or whatever, disturbs my peace of mind, I'm going to convert it right there. Whether I'm having a meeting with my solicitor or whatever, and whatever happens, happens. It doesn't matter. I don't have to make an excuse for myself. I don't need to apologize if I cry, if I laugh, if I whatever. But it's like the message is only living now. The message is only alive now. The miracle is now. Not tomorrow. Not yesterday. Now. Like there are levels. All right, this is a dream within a dream. Within the dream, at the lowest level, I can become aware that I'm dreaming. In the next level, which we call the happy world, I've been aware that I've been dreaming for quite some time, and I've been applying the principles of awakening from my dream to the point where I can actually see the structure of my original dream beginning to change, as in, i.e., falling away from me in a way that does not represent sacrifice. You know, and I walk into this new moment right here, right now, without any idea of how that ought to look, without any preferences, without any judgment. And I find myself, right here and now. Right? That's true communication. That's the activation of the mind, where you can go within, and what previously took like maybe an hour or 2 hours of meditation happens instantly, because it is the holy instant. It's not the holy half an hour. It's not the holy hour, although in the lessons we give half an hour, because our minds are so dense. Our minds are so inured with the world and all we think that we should be doing. Maybe if I meditate this way, and maybe if I meditate that way, and maybe the prayer would be better if I face the sun, and all. We have, like, a human being has an entire gamut of ridiculous thoughts about how it is to approach God, right? God's just saying, come on, come on. I don't care how you get here. Come on. Just take one single step with me wholly, one single step with me wholly right now, and enter into this moment in its fullness and its glory and its beauty. And that has nothing to do with the world or any of our ideas about fullness or wholeness or glory. You'll find out when you enter. All right, it's the same thing as saying you'll see it when you believe it, not the other way around. People often say to me, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. And my only response is, no, you won't. But good luck with that. You know, people always want proof, but faith has no proof. Faith only has faith. So that's the journey. That's the pathway. That's where it is that the mind misses every single tick of the clock, the opportunity to enter into true communication. And I have a beautiful thing happening here at the moment. We have we have another room that's like way out there, the session room, and I think they've probably gone by now, but there's some guys up there doing a light session and stuff. And we have one of the brothers that comes along is just starting to be able to have these moments. It's been 18 months from using the course, having these moments of entering in and seeing these glimpses of light, these flashing expansions of light across the background of the conscious association in the mind, you know. And it's like, when that happens, I remember the first time that it happened to me, I had no words, you know, and this is post-enlightenment. I thought that was all there was. But to be able to enter into another mind that's at that level and to be able to communicate, and like that happens, you know, by the grace of God, yes, but it also by your willingness. And I know if you talk to Annie will be able to tell you probably far many more stories than me about all of those sorts of things going on. And it's like I can't really express how comforting it is, how absolutely, totally comforting it is to have a moment of true communication. It's like for my whole life, I've been speaking gibberish, and then all of a sudden I stop speaking for one instant, and true language that I understand wholly, blazes across the threshold of my mind as the silence of creation, as the word of God, which has no sound. And I understand it. I understand it perfectly. It's home. It's the most beautiful, know. But from where we stand, from where we sit, from where we view our Zoom meeting and everything else, we're on the road to the market with our barrow load of goods. And it's always the case that Jesus is passing me by and says, give up the world and follow me. And immediately our minds, I've got to say my mind, turns to my cartload of goods, my worldly affairs, because the ego always speaks first. Just let me go and sell my goods in the marketplace, Jesus, and I will gladly follow you. There's always going to be that just. There's always going to be that pause, that moment where you have to consider the offer. And it's like everything is lost in that consideration. Everything. If I could express the glory and the magnitude of, it's beyond the course. It's beyond what the course can. You read some of the things in the course and it's so beautiful. You read and it's like, oh, I wish that was true for me. And so many things in that course are true for me. So many of the things that Jesus says that you'll see, that you'll hear, that will appear, that will disappear, those things have actually happened to me as physical, beyond physical, all sorts of things true that he said they've happened to me. But not one of them is as beautiful as a single instant of true communication. Because that's home. That's the language that we actually speak, not these blah, blah, blah words that, you know, when we... Thank you. So don't waste those cycles. Don't waste those things. Don't think that just because it might be a little tiny small trigger that it's nothing to worry about. The moment that you realize that your peace of mind's been disturbed by anything, whether it's something you think is fantastic or something you think is horrific, it doesn't matter either way. Peace is the center line. Whatever goes, like the Buddhists call it, the middle path, right? But whatever from there, either side of that path, you don't want any of it, okay? That doesn't mean that you're not going to be tempted to go and get some of it. And sometimes it'll be the debased stuff you want, and sometimes it'll be the glorious stuff you want. There's no judgment from me either way. I mean, I've walked this path as long as you have, but the peace path, the path in the middle, that's the one we want, okay? Recognize, train your mind to learn to recognize when it is you've strayed from the path, because that old saying, the first step into hell is a slippery slope, that's a true thing. You only got to just slightly deviate from the path a bit, and the next thing you know, you'll be pulling your hair out wondering how you got where you're at, and you'll need another miracle to get back again. Luckily, you're entitled to miracles, and there's no limit. There's no, it's only actually the one miracle. And that was the insertion into consciousness of that moment of forgiveness, that moment where resurrection proved the fabric of the whole teaching, which gave you the ability to apply forgiveness to just decide for yourself and to prove to yourself as your own witness that the teachings of Christ are true. The teachings of Jesus are true, that you're not from this world. You're a stranger in a strange land, but there is a home that you belong in, and where you can, you know, where you actually already are, and you can awaken to that if you want to. So I notice Tina's missing from my page. Are you still there, Tina? Can she unmute? Oh, there you are. Can you unmute these guys, so in case they have any questions? Because I want to make sure we're all still traveling along a bit.
How about we do it like this? Raise your hand, and then I'll unmute you. So now everyone's unmuted at the same time.
Anyone have a question? I can't see everybody.
You're raising your physical hand. Okay, I see Doug. You can raise your hand on
Oh, you
Zoom
can see
too,
Doug?
physical hand
I can't
is cool. Yeah,
see.
I can see everybody. It's cool.
How can you see everybody? This is just a question. How come you can see everyone and I can only see 8 people?
I've got a bigger screen.
Because it says,
but
really? That's all it is?
I've got a bigger screen, yeah. But Dave, if you swipe to the right or the left, you should be able to see more people.
Aha! There's Wendy and Travis. And Michelle, hey. Anna, Terry, look at all these people. Ida, Jasmine. Oh, there's a whole bunch on the other page. Oh, there's Fatima. Yeah. I thought she checked out.
You got 20 people. And Doug's got his hand up.
Oh, Doug, go for it, man. Where are you?
So
hang on.
You were talking about death when we started the meeting tonight, and about experiences you had this past week. You mentioned several times that came up for you. So am I to understand, or we to understand, that those were just associations for you? They were a representation for you, or a metaphor? So was death actually death, or was it just an idea, a metaphor that came up for you around this idea of death?
No, death is actually death. Right. So let's look at the whole continuum as being an idea of death. Okay. Now, within the framework of the whole continuum of let's just take one day. All right. I know all examples are of the ego, but let's just do this for a second. If you just take one day from the time you get up, from the time you go back to bed again, everything that occurs on the physical platform of that day is a symbolic representation of a belief in death. All right. Now, death is the foundation of the framework that we're using to validate our idea of separation. Right. Death is not the separation itself. Death is something that we can recognize in order that we learn how to get the results of our own thinking and decide that, I don't like the results of that thinking anymore. I want something else. Not knowing what the something else is, but being willing to ask within if there's an alternative, and then discovering, of course, boom, Shankar, there's Jesus. It's like, here, take my hand. But for me, so enlightenment happens 2 ways. Actually 3 ways, I should say, or 1 way, by the grace of God. But the process of the transformation of healing, right? So for me, I'm top down. I had the enlightenment first, and then the process of transformation, which I'm still undergoing. It's been in time 26 years or something since I picked up the course, and using it every day diligently as best I can, and being vigilant for that. And these days, very rarely anything pops into my mind at all that disturbs my peace of mind. Most things I kind of laugh away and whatever. Whereas at one time, let's say in the beginning, it would have thrown me for a 6. My mind would have just been like doing cartwheels about the smallest little thing that came up. And then the other way, of course, is to do your transformation first, where you stumble upon, and I say stumble loosely because it's not really a stumble, it's orchestrated, but you come into a curriculum of transformative discipline, whether that's through Buddhism, Christianity, whatever, or just your own kind of sense of things, and you begin to apply it until you reach enlightenment. Okay. Now, both parts are required, but both parts don't necessarily always occur within the framework of time and space. And in fact, the actual experience of enlightenment doesn't occur within the framework of time and space, but it is experienced here. Okay, because the part of the mind that believes in death or believes in the separation is still not separate from the rest of the mind that's actually still in total perfect communication with the whole, with God. All right. So when stuff shows up for me, I always treat it as total reality. Okay. It's not hypothetical or whatever that was you said. Is it an analogous or whatever? It's totally real. I don't want to try and dim the shine off it by anything. All right. If I recognize that I've been triggered, a metaphor. That was it. Words. So I want to look at whatever shows up as being of maximum benefit. So in the moment that I'm identifying with that idea of death as invalidating it by either trying to push it away or attract it, which is the same thing, I'm deliberately wanting it in doing that, I'm dead, right? In a literal sense. Okay. Now, if you look at the idea of death as being non-communicative with life, and the idea of alive as being communicative with life. Okay. So in the dream of death, I'm a dead thing. I know it sounds kind of hard because we have these ideas that I'm alive and I'm waiting for death to get me at the end. And I saw a T-shirt, a really cool T-shirt, which was it said "Born dead, alive in Christ." Right. So true life, the life that is eternal, is what life actually is. So in that, I don't have to worry about it, because that's actually the fact of the matter. That's the case. All right. What I do have to worry about, not that I'm particularly worried because I have the miracle, but what I do have to worry about is being honest with where I find myself, being honest with where I find my reflections when I'm confronted with something in the world, and allowing myself to own it or to be responsible for it totally. Okay. To the point where this is an idea of death. It only goes in one direction, right? Essentially, I'm standing in the mortician's waiting room looking at caskets for my imminent demise. But because everything in time and space is slow time, I don't get the results of that thinking immediately, because what's immediate here is only my ability to make a new choice. Everything else depends on time coming and going and according to that script. So I have a chance, I have an opportunity, I have this potential contained within the framework of my ideas, right? And every idea has potential. I have this potential contained within the framework of my ideas to be able to exercise my rights, okay? To be able to call upon my inheritance at any given moment. And with the recognition that I have a new purpose, then that's what I'm doing. Okay. If I have to go down that rabbit hole a bit and sit right at the bottom of whatever I think that is that's trying to tempt me into believing death is something, then so be it. I can do that. Okay. Because by the grace of God, I'm eternal. By the grace of God, I've entered into this covenant. Okay. And we talked about this as the honeymoon period last week. I've entered into this covenant with God that not only am I forgiven for my mistakes, which are completely unrecognized by God altogether. Not only am I forgiven for my mistakes, but I'm also absolved of the need to have to rectify myself from them. It happens miraculously. Okay. So if for a second I sit in this idea of death and I totally die, I still don't actually die. Right? Death is the one idea in the whole framework of time and space that you can't get the result of, because you'd have to come back around to see that you were dead. You get that? That's how ridiculous this is. It's like, just hold the phone. Let me just duck around through the bardo and I'll come back in and I'll just peep through there. Yep, I'm dead. You can't ever die. And I think it was did everyone see the what's it called when you leave not a will, is it an epitaph of Nick Nack Tharn? Oh no, I did that last week, and I won't do it again. Thich Nhat Hanh, I can't remember. Oh, anyway, Annie knows it. She's got it tattooed on her arm. Oh no, you've got Om Tat Sat, don't you? Tic Tac Toe, yeah, right. It's funny. You got to see the humor in everything. There's 365 lessons for dummies. The improbability and the impossibility of death is so obvious that it's like how did I miss that? Did I trip over and bump my head on the way into this continuum or something? It's like somebody's selling me some storyline, and it's like, hang on a minute, how am I going to validate that I'm actually dead? You know? It's funny. Anyway, any questions? Well, let me go back to, hang on, let me go back to Doug. Doug, is that cool with you? Did that answer what you were? Yep. I can't hear you now. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just remember, whatever shows up, right? And you guys will all have your own individual obstacles, right? It's actually the same obstacles as anyone else seems to have, because there's just one mind going through this idea of separative obstacles. It's actually that you're either looking at, I'm either looking into the light or away from it. It doesn't matter how that shows up in form. Okay, whether that's through disease, whether that's through financial whatever, or religious observance, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's either I'm looking into the light or I'm looking away from it, and my own peace of mind is my barometer for where I'm at with it. But being honest, right? So we started in the beginning of this thing, being honest about where I'm actually at with it. Okay, so that I'm not sitting in this kind of spiritual bubble, right? If a week goes by and my apples aren't all tipped out of the cart, then I know that I'm in a spiritual bubble. And I think it was Gangaji said even 3 days. She's kind of like lethal. I'll give you a few more days of, just to breathe there. But you get the idea, though. All right. So,
Dave, there's a few
Yeah,
questions.
we got a couple of hands.
oh,
Yeah,
go
right.
for it. Eric's got
Eric
one.
first.
Ida, go for Eric.
Hi there, everybody.
Hey,
you men-
I'm awesome.
You mentioned forgiveness at every
Yes.
cycle to practice forgiveness. Is it
Yep.
the forgiveness we practice at circle? Is it, or is it just like? Can you elaborate a bit? Like, is it forgive to be forgiven, to be?
No. Okay, Red. All right. So, was that your question? Is that the scope of it?
Yeah. I mean, what kind of forgiveness can you? I'd like you to elaborate.
Okay, I'll get to that in 2 seconds. Ida?
Financials is a great thing that where I'm at. Walk me through it. What do you mean by honesty? What do you mean by not going into the spiritual bubble? I have some understandings, but I'm open to yours.
Were you at the start of this talk when we first started?
I think I missed the first 15 minutes.
Okay. When this is done, go back and watch the first 15 minutes, because that bubble we talked, Annie, do you think we were there, weren't we?
Yeah. And this will be put into a recording so that you can go back and listen to it again. So where he's talking about.
But I will get to it. All right. I'll just do Eric's one first. So forgiveness, right? It has to be miraculous, Eric. Okay. It can't be something that you predetermine how to forgive, because forgiveness is of God, not that God sees the need for it, but because you're entitled to it as a child of God. Okay. Now, what you're forgiving isn't someone else for doing something to you. It's not that you're better than someone because you're able to forgive, or in a position where you can forgive, or you feel like you should forgive. It's none of that. It's like literally when Jesus says, give up the world and follow me, you're forgiving yourself for every manifestation of that pause, for every manifestation of that. Let me think about that for a second, Jesus. Okay. And that manifestation shows up again and again and again in every relationship and situation you have in the world, that is going to tempt you to believe that there is something in the world that can offer you more than is being offered to you through your own salvation. Okay, so literally you're giving up the world and following him, let's say incrementally until finally you're willing to do it wholly. It's like a little child has to be led. And you know, when you have, I don't know if you have over there, those ghost trains at the show, and you go through, and when you're a little kid, you put your hands over your eyes, you don't want to see it, you know, and then eventually after you've been through the first time and whatever, the next time you go through, you'll be doing this, like just peeping. And then the next time you go through, you'll be like, woohoo, this is great. And because you've learned that everything that you feared was simply sheets over a balloon or a rubber skeleton or something. And it wasn't the horrific thing that you actually thought it was, right? Salvation is the same thing. You actually think there's something in the world, but I'm telling you, it's rubber skeletons and it's ghosts and it's nothing. Okay. So you're forgiving yourself for that pregnant pause, for that moment of pause, wherein the potential to continue to fabricate a world separate from God seems to exist in your mind. Okay. Right now, that seems to exist as the idea that I think I need to watch a video. I'm a sign that says, don't read me. I'm a sign that says, I'm not going to tell you anything that you already don't know or don't already know. Right? But because our minds are of the forgetting, we have to be reminded that again and again and again, whether that's through a lesson in a book or through the presence of another brother who's saying, hey, it's just a dream, don't worry about it. You know, it doesn't matter how that reminder comes across. When you're new in this and when you're starting out in your transformation, it comes across sometimes as a slap in the face and why does this keep happening to me and all of these sorts of things, because the universe is constantly trying to get your attention. It's like a little kid and the mother says, don't do that, it's not good for you, but yet you still insist on doing it because you love it when your mother tells you off, because you get attention from it, right? It validates you, right? You'll do it again and again and again, just so you can get your mum angry and feel good about it, you know, the power of your own mind. It's like, wow, that really worked. It's like if you watch Super Nanny, I've only ever seen the one episode, but she uses the reverse psychology of that situation perfectly. Like she's got it down pat with kids. But I don't even know if that's still on anymore, if you guys get it over there. But forgiveness applies to literally everything. Whatever it is that distracts your attention from this. You ready? Here, and then, oh, look at that, something shiny. And it's like, oh, look at that, something horrible. Okay? Forgive. Back again. Yep, exactly. Right there. So, does that answer that? Thumbs up? Yep, good. Forgive the world, which includes yourself. That's the whole thing. So, I want to do that one about money, actually, because it is, where did she go? Who was that? Oh, Ida. I have to swipe. You guys, people join in and leave, and we've got Mercy, Kevin, and Tina. Oh, that's Tina. Right. So money's really simple. It's like anything. It's like health, right? And I'll do this with health because you might see it easier. Okay. The idea of sickness and health is exactly the same thing. Okay. I'll transfer this to money, but because having gone through a horrific adventure with cancer, right? And I haven't had a horrific adventure with finance. This is more relevant to me through the journey of my physical healing rather than anything, but it's the same principle in play. So the idea that I want to be healthy, okay, is the same idea that I want to be sick. And you're going to say, well, that's crazy. How could that possibly be something? Okay. But if you look at the whole idea of the world as yin and yang, you get the results of your own thinking here. And from an unrepentant posture, right? And every fragment of our lives is unrepentant until we atone for it. Unless we do it wholly and solely once. But I look at the idea then that, oh, I've chosen sickness or I've chosen poverty, right? And I think that health is actually my alternative to being sick, or that financial wealth is my alternative to being not poor, okay, which is only guaranteed to keep me in that cycle of sick and health and poor and rich again and again and again. Whether that plays out in my cycle as a weekly occurrence, like when I get my paycheck, let's say each week, and then by the time next week I'm broke again, or whether I get, let's say in the idea of sickness, whether I get the annual flu, whatever, and then next year it comes back again, I'm sick of getting this flu, or whatever it is, hay fever every time the flowers come out, you know, whatever. So the base premise is that I'm not a body, okay? But that doesn't do me any good when everything seems to be trying to convince me that I absolutely am a body, right? It's ridiculous. I can't meet my bills. I'm always at the doctor's, whatever the situation seems to show up as, right? The alternative to that is not the opposite of it. The opposite of it only keeps that in perpetuation, okay? The alternative to it is a miracle. Now, because you mentioned money, I'm going to tell you my money story. This is only a very small story, but it's the only one I have. And the miracle of my money story is your money story. My money story was a weekly occurrence of having about $4 a week left in my hand, if I was lucky, right, at the end of every week, in order to get me through the last couple of days until I got my next pay. And I wouldn't say it was a miserable life, but I couldn't do anything, right? All my friends would be going out and having fun and doing stuff. And I'd be like, oh, I'm okay, I'll just stay home, because I couldn't even afford to go out and have one drink. And that was where I was at, right? And then one day, I met this woman who was considerably older than me, and we ended up in this kind of relationship, and we were both course students, and we were having this, we knew our relationship was about teaching and learning. It wasn't about whatever the physical nature of the relationship could provide, but that was included, like everything's included. So, and one day she just said to me, look, you've never got any money. And mobile phones had just come in, right? That'll tell you how long ago this was. Mobile phones had just been a thing. They'd gone from being those big bricks that guys used to wear as status symbols around their waist, you know, with the big hand thing, to being something you could put in your pocket. And she said, I always wanted a phone, right? I thought that'd be so cool. You know, I'm a bit of a techie. I'm obviously not, but I like the idea of it. I said, oh, that'd be so cool to have a phone. She goes, we're going to go and get you a phone, right, and put it on a plan. And I thought, man, every cent I have currently goes to paying all my bills, my rent, my food and everything. I don't even have enough for this plan that she's talking about. But because there was this recognition in me that I had to be miracle-minded, right? I was learning to be miracle-minded. I said yes. I said yes to the plan, even though I knew I didn't have the money to honor it. I knew I didn't have any capacity where I could just go and work extra days, extra hours, and make more money to honor the plan. And I thought, I'm probably going to have this phone for 1 month, and then they'll cancel my plan because I won't be able to afford it and everything. And, you know, it'll just be this whole disaster. That's all I could see in my mind, right? There was all my doubts. How am I going to do this? How's this going to happen? So anyway, I said yes, knowing that I was going to let it be a miracle. We went down, we got the phone. I signed on the dotted line for the phone. It was something like $8 or $12 a month. It wasn't very much. And for the next few days, I was excited. I had this phone, this whole thing. And I was kind of preoccupied with how I was going to pay for it as well. And that preoccupation brought me to a kind of a threshold of what I would say would be anxiety or concern or whatever about being able to afford it, being able to pay for it. And it got to this point where I knew I had to do something, right? But because I had prayed, because I had allowed it to be a miracle, you know, a miracle-minded action of saying yes, I made a choice to let go of my concerns, let go of my worries and fears about how I was going to pay for this phone, which in the grand scheme of things isn't much. And then the next thing you know, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who'd just bought an acreage up the road at Ewingsdale in Byron Bay. Druin. I don't know if he's still around the woods. And he offered me 3 days a week work in his fruit orchard. And I had more than, and free rent at his house and all this sort of stuff. And I had more than enough money to pay for the phone. I had free rent, so I had all that on top of that. And the universe had provided me with an avenue how to not only pay for the phone, but to give me more than I actually needed, right? Which wasn't really more than I actually needed, because as it turned out, the universe had other plans in store for that other money. And, I was able to contribute a little bit to the meditation center where I was going at the time. So it all kind of panned out. Now, that same action of being miracle-minded with finance, with whatever, it's going to be applicable to you and your own imprint, your own emotionality, your own signature in life with whatever the situation's showing up for you. Okay. And because you're looking at money now, it's like, well, Jesus has said to me, give up the world and follow me. Am I really willing to do that? Or am I going to hold myself accountable to, or am I going to hold myself in sacrifice to this situation where I think I need money or don't have money or whatever? It's like, no, I have to give up the world and follow him and trust that whatever's in my greatest good will come to me. Right now, one of my teachers, Ted, used to always say, you'll never have more than you need and you'll never have less than you need when you live a spiritual life. And this old idea about being a renunciate or an ascetic where you have to give everything away and live on eating snow but that's not it. Like, if you want to do that, God bless you, go for that. But there's no reason whatever why, in the pursuit of living a simple life, right, whatever simple is to you, I'm not going to tell you what simple is. You could be the CEO of a multinational company. That could be simple. But in the pursuit of living a simple life, because let's keep it simple, stupid. You guys all know that. You've heard of that before. All right. We're learning to not dumb ourselves down, but to reduce our footprint, I guess, in a way where we start to realize how much time we waste doing things that are non-essential and not really conducive to our sense of peace and our sense of self, right? So, and another little Gangaji teaching on that too, she used to say, have a look at your key ring. How many keys have you got on your ring? The more keys you have on your key ring, the more complicated your life is. And that's just a very general across the board kind of rule, but it's kind of accurate, it's like, and I've got like 50 keys on mine. I've got all sorts of keys for stuff and I just never throw them out because I can't remember what they open. I think one day I think, oh, Annie's got one. Yeah, you need to leave the Shire, Annie. Annie's got one key. So, but that idea of money, of financial, whatever, and I think it was Sundar Tarakan wrote a book called The 7 Flames of Consciousness, and where money, I want to get to the core of this. I kind of have to pad it out and go around the edges, right? Because the mind likes to worry about all sorts of things, right? Human beings are not complicated. We like to think we're complicated. We like to think that our stories about our lives are unique and individual and how impressive we are because I'm more damaged than you. And, oh, you poor thing, look at all this life trauma you've had. It's like being in the continuum is all the life trauma you ever need. Okay. So just being here, I wake up every morning, Jesus says I die daily. I wake up every morning. It's like, oh my fucking God, it's all right, here we go. Take Jesus' hand and off I start my day. But human beings are not complicated. We have very basic, simple things: procreation, money, food. You can go to any person anywhere in the world, not even need to speak the language, and you'll know exactly what they need by their particular situation, really, right? It's not difficult. So money is one of those things. Don't look at it as I need money. Look at it as I need to improve my relationship with God. Okay. The money is a catalyst. That idea of need. What do I really need? I need my Father. I need creative love in my life. I don't need money. Money's a symbol that represents other things that I think I need and want. when I pursue only the relationship I have with God in that situation, right, without deciding how that ought to look, then everything else that I think is missing from that situation will become fulfilled in me and therefore in that situation, because the only place love is ever absent is in my own mind, right? If God is everything, it must be there. It's just me holding it at bay, right? And I'm holding it at bay because I want to. I'm poor or I'm sick or I'm whatever it is I am, because that's what I want. That's the decision I made when I chose to come to time and space, was to experience myself in limitation. Hey, Courtney. Okay. Time and space is an experience of limitation. Time and space is an experience of scarcity and lack and all of these things. It's like, and you get to a certain point and you think, I'm really not enjoying this experience anymore. You know, I'd like to have something other than this experience. But the trouble is, you're going to attempt to want to define what it is you want other than this experience, based only on the fact that you only have ideas of limitation in your own consciousness. So whatever you try to structure for your future is going to be based on those same limited ideas that you have already, that's got you in the situation you find yourself in now, which is why this has to be a miracle, right? I need to improve my relationship with God, not fix the situation that I think is showing me that I have a lack in my life. Can you hear that? Now, that's going to require a leap of faith, right? Which is going to bring you into direct contact with the fear of letting go of all of those reasons that you've structured those framework of limitation to represent yourself as limited, to represent yourself as separate, because this is a journey to unity, right? This is a journey into oneness where we actually are already one, but in our own awareness of ourselves as being one, this is a journey where we're saying, I'm willing to take another step. Okay, I don't know how that looks, but here I seem to be looking at an idea of lack or an idea of need. All right. Now, if God is everything and I only want God, what could I possibly need but that? Right? How beautiful is the journey ahead of you, right? But you're still going to have to confront all the fearful reasons you thought that lack would be a better option than accepting God's love, right? Well, you know, it's like the story of the prodigal son. I don't want to be a cobbler and make shoes like my dad and his dad before him. I don't want to be a co-creative son of God like my you know, like if you can imagine it as a chain of creative associations, you know, like that one before me and that one before me. I want to do something else with my life. God gave me free will, and here I am. I'm going to be a homeless person, and I'm going to live in lack, and I'm going to be thing. And then I can blame God. Fuck you, God. You know, why me, Lord? Why can't I have more in my life like everyone? It's like, because you don't want it. You chose to be poor. You chose to be limited. You chose to live in lack. You chose to come to the physical dimension, right? Now, the reasons that you've been taught for why you came to the physical dimension is that, and if you wanted to look at it as being taught, but the reasons you've assumed is that you're a victim here. I don't know why I'm here. No one seems to know why we're here. And we look around and whoever seems to have the best idea, oh, let's be like that person, right? No one has a clue. The only clue is already within you, and it's already waiting for you to just say yes to it. It's that simple, right? And then all of a sudden you'll be the one out there, you know, and people will be going, how come she's always happy? She's got nothing, you know, and she's always happy. And I've got 10 red Ferraris and I'm miserable as shit. You know, it's like, it's true. Money can't buy happiness, right? It doesn't last. All you end up doing is pursuing a goal, acquiring the goal, and then feeling that sense of deep lack and emptiness that was there before you acquired it, right? Which was the need. Okay. Om Navashi Maya, whatever it is. Let go of all desire. I'm terrible at remembering those little. I used to hang out with the Hare Krishna guys for a while years ago. But never fool yourself that it's not the need that you want. Okay, that it's not the death that you want, that it's not the lack that you want. That's the human condition. The human condition is one that exists within the framework of need, lack, and want, and desire, and all of that stuff. Okay, so don't be surprised when you find yourself in it. It's like, oh, I get it. I came here to experience that. I'm experiencing it. I don't like what I'm experiencing. It kind of sucks. Now let me make a new choice. I don't know what to choose instead of this, but I'm done with this, right? Through prayer of the heart for the healing of the mind that believes in separation, the Holy Spirit comes into your mind, reorganizes your defensive mechanisms, right, through a process of reinterpretation, where you learn to see then those same situations that represented lack as situations that represent opportunity, not to fulfill the lack that you perceive in the financial framework, but to have a closer awareness of the presence of God within your own life. And then you'll restore the flow in that situation again. Okay, what's out there is a symbolic representation of what's going on in here, nothing more, nothing less. Heal it in the mind, right? Restore that relationship to its true and sacred place in you. Everything else will begin to flow. You can do this, you already did. Right? This is a journey that's already over. We're looking back at it from the end, collaborating in a new framework of technology that we're calling divine forgiveness or radical forgiveness, to collapse the time that it once took. Okay? And that's not going to make sense until you actually have the experience. Everything in this is about the experience. The penultimate experience is the realization or the remembrance of self, which is divine union with God. Until then, like I was talking about earlier in this session, until then, let me just check my battery. Yep. Until then, we have the holy instant, right, which is these instantaneous moments of communication that dawn upon us seemingly spontaneously, but in accordance with our willingness to participate in the atonement principle in our lives, right? Allowing God to be the predominant goal in all our affairs. I don't need money, I need God. I don't need health, I need God. Okay. Now, your prayers may fail. Okay. Jesus says, I stand halfway between man and God in case your prayers fail, right? Temporarily. Because at first, all your prayers, all your words, right? Words are symbols twice removed. All your words are simply blah, blah, blah. They're just rhetoric. Right? I need more money, or I need a new job, whatever. They come from a place of lack. They're tainted with ego. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a point of honesty in realizing that it doesn't matter how honest I think I'm being. It's still me, the idea in denial that's still trying to formulate something going on here. And all my conceptual associations with even the idea of prayer are false by definition, right? But Jesus already knows. It's like he says, God knows what you want before you even ask. But you have to ask because you have free will, right? No one's going to take the world from you unless you are willing to let it go. You have to choose, right? The universal law of free will is that it's sacred. Okay. Now you'll get to the point where you realize there's actually no such thing as free will, right? Within the framework here. But because we believe in the possibility of an opposite to what our truth is, the framework of free will is given you in order that you can see about getting the results of your own thinking and learning how to make new choices. Does that make sense? All right. It wouldn't do any good just to pull a rug out from under your feet, because you'd be like, what happened? Right? You've got to see by the power of your own choice that you're actually involved in a process that's getting you the result that you want. Right? Prior to that, you weren't able to see that you were getting the results that you want because you didn't know that death was what you chose. You come into the world with amnesia. Why am I here? What the hell's it all about? Why does this shit keep happening to me? Right? All of a sudden, someone like me or whoever turns up and says, hey, it's just a dream. Don't worry about it. Let's make a new choice. Let's set a new direction within the framework of the dream, and we'll use our past learning as the rungs whereby we can climb up out of the muck and the mire of our bad decisions to start to see the light of a new day dawn on us above the, above the crap. But we've grown accustomed to our dingy, dark, limited little association that we call life. It's like whoever has the most toys is the king of the dung heap. It's like, that's great, but you're still on the dung heap. It does you no good. It's like, hang on, let's just get out of here altogether. I see what's going on here. We'll just get out of here altogether. I don't want even any, the best of best, whatever goes on here. I don't want any of it. I see where it leads. It all ends up as, and then you pop up again. Someone pulls you out of someone's vagina and smacks you on the ass, and then bang, here you are. And it's like, whoa, not again. Right? Why do you think babies, they always do this? It's like, oh, look at my hands. Look at this thing. And they cry so much. Those that have been here around the sun a lot of times, they're like, they cry the most. Surely no. That'll be me next time if I have to come back again. No, kidding. So anyway, does that answer your question? All right. Don't
Yes,
judge the
thank
form.
you. Mhm.
Okay. Don't judge the form, apply the principle. Okay. I'm on a journey of rekindling my relationship with God, which is my true self. That's what I'm working on. I'm not confused about trying to fix, because the world will always have problems. The world is a place whose purpose is to continue to give you problems that you think you can solve somehow or another and waste your time here. Okay. But time is the one thing that you can't afford to waste because it's always against you. So learning then of your true purpose. What is my purpose in every given situation? It's to learn to see God in that situation. Right. It's not to learn how to have more money. Right. And the only way you're going to do that is like me buying that phone, by taking a leap of faith, just saying yes. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do that. I'm just going to say yes, and the door will be open. All right. I said yes. I bought the phone and the door opened. I didn't even know Druid had bought an orchard. Hey, Michelle. I didn't see you there. You're all blurry too, along with Annie. Annie's blurry. Fatima's really clear. Oh, Jasmine. I got some. We got a Courtney. Kevin. There's a few. Forgive me if I'm remiss in acknowledging you here, because some of the things on my screen are blank and I don't really know much about the Zoom. So, Wendy and Travis, what's going on with you guys? You guys are out in the desert, or are you somewhere else at the moment?
Pretty much. We were just in California, and now we're back in Arizona. So yeah,
that's out in the. I looked at all the pictures of you guys' place out there. It looks pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So yeah. It's exciting.
Any of you guys want to go and hang out with these two? I don't know if you can see them on your screen. Wendy and Travis, go and hang out with them. They have they can tell you anyway. You can get in touch with them, but they have a healing center. Oh, Donna, you're out there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Are you? Yeah, cool. So they have a healing center in. They'll tell you where it is.
Did you do it?
It's unmuted.
Oh, unmuted. Yeah, I mean, raise a hands if you're here because you heard it through us.
Or through Donna.
Donna. Yeah, see, it's, what are we, 9 people?
10.
10
Fatima's
people?
with that.
Yeah, so we're getting you teaching us, and you don't have to come to Sedona. It's beautiful. Technology.
You guys are actually teaching me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the cool. It's the cool thing about this. I love how this works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's awesome.
all right. So, but anyone who does want to go to Sedona, you know,
Well,
one of
yeah,
the
we're
things.
not quite ready yet. You won't find much there. We're working on it.
Yes.
But you'll be there.
You know,
Yes.
I will say that your money
Yeah.
story is my money story. It's the same thing. I'm doing the same.
Right. Exactly.
I'm done with this. I sold the business. I'm out. I don't know if I have enough. We'll see. But that's what we're doing. And the doors are opening and the people are coming in. And I've done it before with this building, what we built already to contain where we had our current healing center. And it built itself. I never had any experience like this at all. The things that came together, I could not have planned. You know, it was a miracle, the way it felt. Yeah. And the people that came. And
that's exactly how it is.
Yeah.
It's happening now, but now it's national, you know, it's different now, but it's
nice.
still the same. So it's very cool.
Yep. Very good.
Yeah.
So,
Courtney,
all right.
did you have
Well,
your hand up? I'm sorry. Courtney,
hang
did
on.
you have your hand up? Or were you just raising
Where's
your hand
Courtney?
for Sedona?
I was
I'm gonna have to
raising
get-
my hand for Wendy and Travis as how I heard
Okay,
to
all
come
right,
here
all right,
tonight.
cool.
And then I remembered to
Uh,
lower it.
Yeah.
Right on.
So,
Just wanted to make sure.
so Dave, the connection,
Yep.
Courtney took over. So Courtney and Laura took over our space in the Seattle area. And so they're the ones that came for that. And now it's running also without us, with us just from the sidelines.
Yeah.
So again, it's just growing up around us. We couldn't have planned any of it.
Build it and they will come.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah.
Well,
that.
you do, obviously.
Until they stop coming.
Yeah.
Ready? That's
that'd be
that's
great.
your that's your goal.
I know.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you hold the door open until the last ones come through. So, and you'll kind of know, because in the beginning there's always a lot. It's like just this onslaught of people and things and situations. It doesn't matter how that plays out. It could be a healing center or a mechanics workshop or all sorts of things, you know.
Yeah.
But it's always going to be busy when you open. When you say yes to the universe, it's going to be busy, 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 because it's that entering back in everything that you've tried to push away. Right? Does that make sense? So it's like I'm projecting out my fears onto a blank landscape and giving everything a meaning. This person, that situation, none of which means anything, but because I think it does, all of a sudden I come across Jesus who says, give up the world and follow me. And I'm like, oh, I've got to relinquish all of those meanings, and everything comes to me for my forgiveness, leaning in to bless me. So whether I open a healing center or whatever, it's always just for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredible. And one of the things I love about this the most is that when I'm in a room with a lot of people, or whether I'm in the room with one or two people, I'm always in the room with myself. You know, that keeps it simple, because all of the stories are my story. All of the associations that are going on there are that one association. It's like I'm either walking into the light or away from it. And the idea that, and this is funny because when you go to AA, right? I don't know if any of you guys, Eric, probably been to AA. When you go to AA, they get you to tell your story. And it's only through telling your story you realize how similar or how unspecial your story is compared to everybody else's story. And you think that you've had a hard life, and you turn up and you hear these other guys talking about their train wreck of a life. And all of a sudden you realize that you should just probably just shut up and just say nothing and let whatever goes on there to actually happen. And it's the same when you open a healing center. Like, all healing is the one healing, which is what I love about this. It doesn't matter whether it's a Course in Miracles or 12-step or the LEAP program, any of that stuff. All of it's the one thing. And when you enter in and you think you're special, you think you've got something, and I'm here because I've got a horrific reason for being here, or a valid reason for being here, and you realize that it's really nothing at all. You know, and then that tends to be the opening, the real actual first opening to change. You know, so thanks for putting a healing center, because it's actually having that portal It's actually having that place where the doors are open, and all of those associations of your own mind individually, and I don't want to say collectively because we're not a collective, it's one mind waking up. But what appears at first to be a collective or an associate, a conglomerate of things is actually the one thing.
The consciousness.
Yeah, it's just mind, so I think, no, it wasn't last week.
Dave?
Who said that?
I think there's another question. I just wanted you to know. I think there's another question.
Oh, go for it. I was just trying to think who I was talking to the other day, right? And I'm trying to reach into the past here for this, but Joel Goldsmith. So I wasn't talking to Joel Goldsmith. Don't worry, he's already left the continuum. But I was talking to someone about Joel Goldsmith. Maybe I put it on a video. Anyway, his book, The Infinite Way, right? I was talking about it just the other day, either to someone or I made a video about it or something, but where he opens up a healing office, he realizes he has this incredible realization that everything's just him. And he opens up a healing office. He doesn't charge any money, and people come and they talk to him and they tell him their story. And all he's doing is this, keeping his finger on his nose. This is me. This is me. This is my mind talking to me. And he's accepting it without judgment. Whatever they tell him, he's including it in as, these are my thoughts returning home to me, right? These are my thoughts coming back for healing so that I can liberate them in my mind of all the meaning I've given them. And he's sitting there doing this, being watchful for his reactions to whatever goes on in the story, right? Because that reaction is your trigger. That reaction is your catalyst. That reaction is your foot in the door, if you like, for forgiveness, right? And he wouldn't charge any money or anything, but people would write to him, send him letters and stuff, like 6 months down the track and go, I don't know what happened that day in your office, but I'm healed and this has happened and blah, blah, blah. And incredible stuff. They'd send him donations and all sorts of things, but just the way he writes, right? So if you have never read that book, The Infinite Way by Joel Goldsmith, I would highly recommend getting it. Just the way he writes. He doesn't have coarse vernacular. He has his own kind of spin on it, but you can easily see his sense of oneness with the infinite with the divine. And for me anyway, it was just like this incredible easy entry into understanding the nature of that I'm one with what I see. And as far as being a healer. So very beautiful. Anyway, Tina, someone had a...
Yeah, Fatima?
Where's she gone? She was on my...
I'm right here.
I can't even see you. Hang on. I'm going to get a bigger...
I'm not even here.
Yeah, I know. Oh, there you are. Go for it.
So I loved everything you said, Dave, but there are parts where I, let's say, had a trigger, right?
Good. That's great.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I love it too. And it was a lot of Jesus.
Yep.
And I
you want me to say it again? Jesus,
yeah, you can go ahead and
Jesus,
Jesus all the time. Okay. And that's not even it. Like, that's not it.
Right.
Right. It's more, it sounded sermonish to me. Like that was my perception of it, right? Yep. That this sounded slightly sermonish. And if I do not choose Jesus as the way and the light and the whole 9 yards, I'm fucking fucked. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And no, but it's not. But you see what I'm saying?
No, I know. I'm just staring with you.
Yeah. And that's how it felt for me. And that's it. That's the story.
Then. All right. Awesome.
Okay.
But you see what you did there?
Yeah.
Where'd she go? Oh, you disappeared. You see what you did there?
Yeah.
So you had to tell me that story about how you felt about Jesus, even though...
No, not how I felt about Jesus.
No. About your interpretation of it, right?
Yeah.
Even though you already knew in your own mind that wasn't the sole reference I was using, etc.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Right. Now, you do that with everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Are you tired of doing that?
Absolutely.
Right. I don't believe you, but anyway.
That's not important. I believe me. That's all good.
That's all that's important then. That's true. That is all that's important. So, but that action of mind that is looking for that quantification of whatever that particular story is, it doesn't matter how you frame it, what it is. It's the same thing that prevails throughout all of time and space. That one story is the whole story. That one action is the whole action.
Yeah, it's a separatist action. Like I was separating myself from the whole entire thing right now. Those people are speaking Jesus, right? Even though I love me some Jesus, don't get it twisted, right? But I'm Muslim and they're all speaking some Jesus right now, right? And so I know what I did, clear as day.
Right.
But there's a feeling that I want to be right about it.
Right. Absolutely. And you are right about it. And I'm going to let you be right about it because that's the only way you're going to learn.
Okay.
Right? You have to learn by getting the results of your own thinking. You can sit here and listen to me or listen to whoever for 1,000 years. I'm not here to change your mind about anything. I'm just here to declare the certainty of my mind about a particular thing that's going on for me that resonates with, let's say, either, and you're like, oops, just dropped me over the edge there. Either resonates with this little book here, which is, you can see up there, little Miss Muslim. All right. So that's my Bible, the Aramaic Bible. You can't get more Muslim than that. So, which resonates with me throughout everything ever written that represents a singular truth.
Right.
Okay. Whether, and it takes a minute, to realize that when someone is expressing, and this is, I don't know if anyone to this group is kind of new to this whole thing, but it's sort of like, but it takes a minute for the mind to kind of cotton on to the idea that anyone who is expressing the certainty of themselves in relationship to their relationship with a singular truth is expressing exactly the same thing, right? It doesn't matter how you pad that out in the framework of the parameters of the presentation, whether through Islam, through Buddhism, through Christianity, through it doesn't matter a bit. It's the same thing because we're talking about one love.
Right.
We're talking about one God, one love, one creative source of reality of which we're all a whole and equal part. And as we progress further and further to that, all of the objections to the way in which it's presented will begin to fall away naturally by themselves as we're willing to learn to open up more and more to the divine nature of love itself rather than try to control the journey. Does that make sense?
Because I watch myself try to agree with you, disagree with you, agree with you, disagree with you, right? And it's like, what am I doing? What's this for? What are you really doing here? And so I was like, okay, well, he also said, if you have an upset, like bring it, and so
absolutely.
Yeah, right. And it's like I brought it, and then I heard you, right? I actually heard you, and I heard you say that, but I wanted to be right about the other fact, right?
Right.
And so yeah.
That's because the ego likes to sit on the fence, right? It loves the idea of that one love and that unity and that wholeness and inclusiveness because it hates the idea that it's missing out on something, right? But it doesn't want to give up what it thinks it's achieved so far in order to get it. Okay, so it sits on the fence. It goes, I love this, but what about that? I want to be right about this and not have to be wrong about that in order to get this, right? That's the ego's game. It does that all the time. Dangle the carrot, take the carrot away. Dangle the carrot, take the carrot away. Okay, which is why we need to reinterpret, which is why mind training, purification of mind and all of that so that we can see that whatever's presented is only ever win-win. There's never a win-lose. If God is everything, then all my fears about losing something to get everything can't be true. Because what would I lose if it's not God? It can only ever be something I don't really want. But that doesn't mean that I'm not delusional and that I don't seem to actually think that I still want it. You know, I'm telling myself I want one thing when actually the opposite is true. I'm saying I want it. I'm peeping through the thing here, looking at it, going, yeah, I want that. But I'm not willing to go, no, knock the thing off. So, am I still on? Yeah. So, you know, but that's the whole thing. Jesus is saying, come here, right? Or Allah is saying, come here. And you're always saying, well, let me just look at that. Let me just examine that next step, because that's a hell of a step. And I don't know if I'm capable of, and it's like, you know, I'll catch you. Just take a step. You know? But you've got to take that step. And that step means letting go of where you think you're standing now. Right? But I don't want to let go of this because I've built up such a reputation of wanting to be right about everything that confirms me actually being in this location of time and space right here and now. And if I take that step, it's going to prove to me that I'm wrong about that in my entirety, whether I want to put that in a religious framework or a non-religious framework. You know, it doesn't matter. Once you cross that threshold between temporal association, right? And we do this through meditation and prayer. Once you cross that threshold, there's no going back. When you see the truth of you in the light, when you realize what you actually are, you can't ever go back to believing that you were something else. Right? But it's like the ego wants to know what it actually is, but doesn't want to let go of the something else just in case. Uh-oh, low battery. Hang on, I've got my charger. I just got to work out where to stick it. All right. So now I'm going to be sideways. Am I still here? Now, hang on. Okay, so when I plug my charger in, I have to turn this thing around because it's closer to the port, because I've only got a very short charger lead.
I love it. Coming to you live from Dave's house.
I know.
Coming to you live.
Where any kind of disaster in communication can happen, and usually does. There we go. How's that? No. I knew my Bible would come in handy for something. It's propping up my thing. There we go. Well, anyway. So maybe if I push it further away. See, last week I had this great idea that I'd be all organized.
No, you're good. That's good.
I'm good. All right. So anyway, we were there. So was that it? Any more questions? Fatima, was that good for you?
Yeah, was it good for you, Dave?
It was good for me.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
All right. So that's it, I think. Have we got any more questions?
Nope, that's it. I think.
That's it.
Questions? Anybody else?
Are you guys all doing like the daily lessons? Are you following along with the year 28 or whatever today it is? Eric's got 2 hands up. Yes, that's a yes. So, cool. So what's today's lesson?
Above all else? Is that what it is? I'm still in last year. But, I think it's above all else time.
Above all else, I want to see things differently.
I don't see anything.
Look, let's just do it.
I'm still in last year.
Who's on 170?
Me.
Who said me? Oh, Eric.
Me. John.
Oh, John.
That's
above all else, I want to see
days.
things differently.
Hmm?
Is that the one? Are you guys using this book?
I don't have a book. I don't have a book yet.
You don't have a book yet.
It's coming.
Maybe you don't even need a book.
Thank God.
If you're doing the lesson, if you're doing the lessons and you don't have a book, you must have this kind of divine connection.
I do.
That's awesome.
It's called
Yeah.
God.
Lesson 28. Above all else, I want to see things.
All right. Hang on. I want to try and figure out this thing.
But I got my angel too. Can bring me a book.
I need to shrink. Oh, look, I'll shrink down on the couch. There we go. All right. So lesson 28. I'm just going to read through this one. And then because you guys are all on it. Oh, good. It's got an application. Because you guys are all on it mostly together. So before I do this, I don't know if Annie's still on. I can't see everybody on the screen, but we used to do every day when I was attending the healing center. Annie and I went to the same healing center and we were together there for about 6 years. It was really full on and confrontational and everything. We would have the daily lesson starting January the 1st written on a big whiteboard in the foyer. So whenever you came to the healing center from wherever you, and if you lived there, because there was residential accommodation as well, but you would have to go through the foyer and you'd see like the daily lesson. So everyone would constantly be on the same page energetically with where they were at and what they were doing in their own mind. So it made it a lot easier for whoever was teaching that day to be able to configure some kind of, reference that people were familiar with, because that's why we have this. So we can talk about our experience of being human in a framework that we can actually understand. We have a common language, right? So I don't know what Wendy and Travis, what you guys do at your thing there, but we would start every day with the 20-minute book, which is the reviews of the first 50 lessons. And anyone who's ever been in a group setting doing anything spiritual, you'll probably be aware of that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Okay, so Jesus says in the Bible, where's Fatima? I'm saying Jesus again. Jesus says, wherever two or more are gathered, there I am in the midst of them. All right, now that's a true thing. We would read the reviews of the first 50 lessons of A Course in Miracles, and we would like be in a circle. We'd have round robin. Someone would read 2 reviews, you go around, read the next 2 reviews, whatever, on a page. And during the course of that reading, because there is a joined purpose, a divine purpose for that, something would always occur, something miraculous. There would always be this kind of spontaneous releasing and experiencing this light communication, all sorts of stuff, which we would later feed on into our meditations. But same thing with reading the lessons. Some people, right, and I'm going to put this out there as some people for a second, it's just me, but some people in reading these lessons, if you're in a group situation, you'll realize that some people will read this lesson and they'll invent words that aren't on the page, or they'll miss words and they'll sort of like, right? The ego does not want you to hear this, okay? It will do everything it can to distract you because your mind is constantly distracted. It's of the forgetting, as we said before. Sorry, Fatima, I know it's late where you are. I'll try to wrap this up. And we would have these moments where you'd have to call upon the Holy Spirit to even help you read the words on the page as they are written. Right, and these would usually be bail-up moments. So when we do our sessions here in the healing room, and where's Michelle? Is she some? Oh, I'll flick through here. When we do our sessions here, Michelle knows this one. It's called, oh, there she is. Michelle would often have these moments of inventing words that weren't there, and I was the same, and everyone who reads this book is the same. And it's amazing how you can get to the end of like a paragraph and have read something virtually completely different and given it a completely different meaning to that which it actually has, and not realize that you've made that mistake. Right? Now, that's because the mind is in limitation. The mind is in, what do you call it? When you're not really tuned in, people, what's woke? I don't want to get into woke politics, but woke people say when you're not conscious about the decisions you're making, you're just kind of like in this autopilot. All right. Now, I liken it to when you're at the airport and you're waiting to catch a plane and you've got an hour delay or whatever, and you go and buy a magazine and you're not really wanting to read the magazine. You're just filling in time. And you're hoping that there's some eye candy there that you can just sort of, and you can read a whole thing. And if somebody was to ask you about it in the plane beside, you'd say, oh, here's the magazine, you read it, because I don't remember what the hell I read, right? So when you're reading the course, it's good to be aware of when you're reading it in the same framework where you would read a magazine waiting at the airport, because you need to put yourself into this. It's like I said in our last Zoom, you need to, when you say, oh, I didn't see that, but anyway, Tina said something, but lost it. I lost that one, got distracted. See how easily I got distracted, right? So when you read this, you have to activate yourself. That's where I was at, okay? So in our last Zoom, I was saying that you have to activate yourself. You have to consciously instruct yourself. You can't just pick this up and go blah, 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 right? You have to consciously instruct yourself with everything. It's like where Jesus says in the morning, set up your day properly, you know, give your day to God, your prayers to God at night, all these things. These are intentional decisions, right? So you have to instruct yourself. I'm going to read this lesson. I'm going to give it total value, total meaning. I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to let that be miraculous even. Because if I don't consciously align myself with what I'm doing, it's going to be like reading a magazine at the airport where I'm not really wholehearted with it. I'm not really in it. I'm just filling in time. And as we said before, the ego corrupts everything, even your best prayer, which is why Jesus substitutes for your lack of best prayer, right? Because the ego corrupts everything, it'll corrupt even your attempt to want to read this and want to allow this to permeate beyond consciousness to the Christ mind in you that actually already knows what this says. Okay, which is why you can read one page in this course, get to the bottom of the page and have no clue about what the hell you just read, right? And I know everybody in this Zoom room is on the same page with that, right? That's why some people have highlighters and their whole book is a highlight, because they have to go back and reread it and reread it and read it. And it's much easier than that. Ready? So I'm going to read lesson 28. If you guys all have your books there, and oh, Fatima's gone to bed.
I just put it in the chat. That's what I was putting in. So it's in the chat.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Oh, she's having another cigarette. I'm watching you now. So in reading this lesson, if you guys have your books, follow along, okay?
It's in the chat.
What's in the chat? What are you
The
talking
lesson.
about?
I'm putting the lesson in the chat too. If you don't have your book, it's in the chat. The workbook lesson.
You're so tricky. I don't even know what that means, but anyway.
Okay, but you guys do,
So,
right?
I have my book. So we'll do it, and then when we get to the end, okay, and then that'll be it. We'll call it quits. So lesson 28. Above all else, I want to see things differently. Okay, so there's a little fly thing going on here. What I want to do before I start reading this lesson, take a breath, make sure in my own mind, just clear things, you know, clear the room in here, make sure there's nothing else going on that I'm distracted by, the kettle or what birds are chirping outside, anything like that, right? It's the same thing when I do a meditation. So, and this might be handy for you or not, I don't know, but when you do a meditation, I learned to meditate from a hypnotist, right? This is many, many years ago, trying to give up smoking and all these other things. And you kind of get addicted to going to a hypnotist if you find a good hypnotist, because it's kind of fun that someone else can screw with your mind and it's actually beneficial. which is like this. But one of the things we would do would be just to sit quietly for a second and just allow everything else to fall away, and just see what, like if anything would come back. So, oh, I'm hungry, or oh, maybe I need a better cushion, or maybe the sun's too bright in the window, whatever like that. There's always going to be something, a bug flying around in front of my face, right? There's always going to be something, because the mind, the conscious mind, is the distraction against your true purpose. And the conscious mind is always going to try and give you a reason for why you can't do this right now. Okay. And if you persist in reneging on your relationship with the ego, it's going to get really uppity. All right. And it's going to give you all sorts of excuses and reasons why you should renege on it, why you shouldn't renege. It'll dangle bigger carrots. All right. So in reading these lessons, taking a breath, reminding myself how important this is. This is my salvation that I'm participating in, right? Just because there's 365 lessons and I read one yesterday, there is no such thing as yesterday. There's only now. There's this lesson, and the efficacy of this lesson as it stands out for me now, as I'm willing to hear it, right? You have ears but don't hear, eyes but don't see, right? A mind that doesn't focus. It's all over the place, distracted by its own thinking, even its own thoughts about these lessons. So above all else, and it's right there in the first three words, above all else, I want to see things differently. Okay. Today, we are really giving specific application to the idea for yesterday. In these practice periods, you will be making a series of definite commitments. The question of whether you will keep them in the future is not our concern here. If you're willing at least to make them now, you have started on the way to keeping them, and we are still at the beginning. You may wonder why it is important to say, for example, above all else, I want to see this table differently. In itself, it is not important at all. Yet what is by itself, and what does in itself mean? You see a lot of separate things about you, which really means you are not seeing at all. Right? How cool is that? You either see or not. Okay. When you have seen one thing differently, you will see all things differently. The light you will see in any one of them is the same light you will see in them all. When you say, above all else, I want to see this table differently, you are making a commitment to withdraw your preconceived ideas about the table and open your minds to what it is and what it is for. You are not defining it in past terms. You are asking what it is rather than telling it what it is. You are not binding its meaning to your tiny experience of tables, nor are you limiting its purpose to your little personal thoughts. You will not question what we have already defined. And the purpose of these exercises is to ask questions and receive the answers. In saying, above all else, I want to see this table differently, you are committing yourself to seeing. It is not an exclusive commitment. It is a commitment which applies to the table just as much as to anything else, neither more nor less. You could, in fact, gain vision from just that table if you could withdraw. Thank you. You could in fact gain vision from just that table if you could withdraw all your own ideas about it and look upon it with a completely open mind. It has something to show you, something beautiful and clean and of infinite value, full of happiness and hope. Hidden, ready? Hidden under all your ideas about its real purpose, the purpose it shares with all the universe. In using the table as a subject for applying the idea for today, you are therefore really asking to see the purpose of the universe. You will be making the same request of each subject which you use in the practice periods, and you are making a commitment to each of them to let their purpose be revealed to you instead of placing your own judgment upon them. We will have 6 2-minute practice periods today in which the idea for the day is stated first and then applied to whatever you see in looking about you. Not only should the subjects be chosen randomly, but each one should be accorded equal sincerity as today's idea is applied to it, in an attempt to acknowledge the equal value of them all in their contribution to your seeing. As usual, the applications should include the name of the subject which your eyes happen to light on, and you should rest your eyes on it while saying, above all else, I want to see this blank differently. Each application should be made quite slowly and as thoughtfully as possible. There is no hurry. Okay, now the thing I love about that is the integrity, the sincerity. Okay, sincerity occurs in the mind in direct relationship to an attributed goal. Okay, when you mean something, you're sincere about it. When you're half-hearted about something, you're not really sincere. Okay, so in every leap of faith that you're going to take in the reparation or the healing of your relationship with your Father, right, with the universe, with wholeness, with one mind, right, in every step, in every leap of faith that you're called upon to take a step forward, there has to be that sincerity, which is why your prayers may fail initially, and you'll find yourself like me. So I had a, and this will be my last little story. I've got so many stories, but they're all stories of healing. But I had a particular situation, right? And I was at the healing center, and it used to keep coming up again and again and again and again. And I had prayed for the healing of my mind about that story again and again and again, and nothing had changed. It kept happening. It kept repeating. And one day I was talking with, we had 2 or 3 Susans, little Susan. We used to call each other. We had about 5 Daves. I was Dog Dave because I was the only Dave that had a dog, and that's how we knew each other. But I was talking with little Susan about it one day. She came to me. I was sitting in the library, and I must have looked quite depressed. And she said, "What's going on with you?" And I said to her, "Look, I've been praying for a miracle about this particular blah, blah thing that was going on, whatever." And she said, "Well, you obviously don't want a miracle." She said, "You obviously still want the drama," right? And I realized in that moment that I wasn't being true to myself. There was still actually something in that situation showing up that I liked. I got validation out of that situation. And I was only saying I didn't want it because I was in this spiritual kind of environment where it was understood that we shouldn't be indulging in these sorts of things, and that we should be making our way to be free of our temporal associations, right? So this one that was particularly clinging to me, and it was involved a woman, whilst it was frustrating because nothing was changing with it, at the same time, I was able to see that I obviously still did want something in it, which was the validation of having the story about it, right? As crazy as that sounds, it's all crazy. And so little Susie said to me, "You need to pray for a miracle to even really want a miracle," right? Because I had no sincerity of myself. And so I prayed for a miracle. I know it sounds nutty, but I prayed for a miracle to even want a miracle. And then something changed. Right? Now, Jesus says something in the Course. I couldn't tell you where. It's in the text where, Annie, you probably know this one, but where you become twice removed from the miracle by the denial of it. You know, like you realize, you have these moments where you realize that there's an opportunity for healing in front of you, but you put it off in a game you play to perpetuate the idea of that need for healing, right? Because that idea of the need for healing is the same idea as seek but do not find, right? Which is what the ego loves. It loves to stay on the edges and dip its toe in the water, but it doesn't like to jump in wholeheartedly. It likes to look through the fence and see what's possible, but it doesn't want to completely walk through that door. Okay? The ego teases you. It dangles the carrot, takes it away. Dangles the carrot, takes it away. And that's the game you become accustomed to. And that's the game you play. And that's the game you bring with you into your spiritual efforts. Okay? Just because you pick up a book, a spiritual book, a book of stories, texts, lessons, whatever, doesn't mean that you've changed. It just means you've found new rules for the same game that you're playing. Okay? Now it's up to you to actually apply those rules, apply those principles through whatever book you're using, whatever principles, teachers, teachings, whatever, so that you can, one, see where it is you're deceiving yourself in your own mind, and two, call upon the correction, which is going to be the miracle. Okay? So if you have to ask for a miracle to even want a miracle, then do that. But in the moment that you ask for it, you'll know that it's a true asking, because you'll get up from your prayers and you'll be like, God damn, that was a good prayer. Sometimes I get up from prayer and I'm like, nah, there was no sincerity there. That was just words, lip service. Okay? And I don't really pray anymore. Like my prayer these days is just thank you. Right? And there was many times in the last God knows how many years where I thought my prayer was just thank you, until finally it came to being a prayer for actual healing, for actual things to change, right? But eventually you realize that you've stopped fighting the flow of the river, and that you're just going with the current at the right speed, at the right pace, going to the right place, and everything becomes just thank you, and you no longer see anything as an obstacle. Okay. It's like the last obstacle to peace is believing that there is one. Because peace is in you right now. All right, well, that's it. Any questions before we finish? Fatima, do you have an objection?
No, sir. This was perfect.
All
Great.
right.
Good job. 10 for Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. You're
That's
really,
fun.
I love
That's funny, isn't it?
It
All right,
is.
and for anyone who missed it at the beginning, I was talking with Tina. There we go. Look, the biscuit of choice. I forget why we were talking about these now. So that's my. Oh, it's my comfort food. That's right. We were talking about comfort, getting comfortable.
Sweet. Thank you, Dave.
All right. I love you all. And Ida, you're okay?
Who, Tina? Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I'm perfect. Yeah,
Courtney.
Cool.
Courtney's actually there. Look at that. Hey. Terry. Laura. That's it. All right. Well,
There's more, but thank you, Dave.
I'll see you guys next week. So next week we're actually going to attempt the first, well, I think it's the first. We're going to attempt to do an actual light session online. Okay. I know, right? Hey. So
what does that mean?
I've done one over the telephone before, and it actually worked. Like, you know, and it's like, I know I sound surprised at that, and I shouldn't sound surprised at that, because there's no limitation to true communication, but it takes it's like where Jesus says in the Course, miracles are your right, but purification is necessary first. Okay, so the mind has to get to a kind of a certain, and I don't know what that certain level is, or that certain integrity is. I never really know. But the mind has to get to a certain point in its own relationship with itself to begin to be able to easily slip beyond that veil of illusion, or the veil of consciousness. You know, it's like, and you may find, like one of the lessons he says, don't be discouraged if you think that nothing's actually happening, because all that's happening is your willingness is there, but that purification hasn't reached that point where, you know, you can sort of enter in. And I never know how that looks, or how that's going to look. I always find too, don't get discouraged, Eric, but I always find too that women are more able to enter into these things because they're more in touch with their emotions, just as that sort of energetic kind of thing. But guys have a greater, how would I put it? You know, what is it when people say about the divine feminine? And I don't want to get into all of that particularly, but the divine masculine, where you allow yourself to sort of encompass both polarities of the human condition, and you allow that vibration to sort of open rather than just holding yourself in this rigid framework. That tends to be what guys do, and women tend to have this other thing. And I think all those boundaries and things are falling away these days, where people are realizing, and mind as it's awakening is realizing that its potential is so much more greater than its initial outlook of itself. Does that make sense? But anyway, we'll try that next week, and I'm going to push like hell. We're going to birth the Christ.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye. Love you all.
Bye,
Thank
you
you,
guys.
David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Check out the, thingy for the video. Thank you guys. Bye. It's a group chat. That's what it is.